Good evening. We'll now call to order the Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022 Reno City Planning Commission. We'll start with item number 1, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Munoz, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Munoz. Michelle, will you please do roll call?
Yes. Alex Felto,
Here.
JD Draculich,
Here.
Peter Gower,
Here.
Mark Johnson is absent, Arthur Munoz,
Here.
Sylvia Villanueva,
Here.
Kathleen Taylor is absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to agenda item number 3, which is public comment. Michelle, do we have any requests to speak forms?
Before we start public comment, I need to read this into the record. So it should be noted for those in the audience that comments are to be addressed to the Planning Commission as a whole. Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that the Planning Commission may not take action upon any matter not agendized for possible action on today's agenda. When you are called on for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name and you will be afforded 3 minutes. Lastly, while in this room, please be respectful. Warnings will be issued by the presiding officer if there is disrupted behavior. You will be asked to leave chambers if the behavior continues. With that, I did not receive any request to speak forms for this item, no voicemails, and no correspondence was received.
Thank you very much. Would anyone in the public like to speak?
I have a request to speak form for the last item on the agenda.
Oh, great. Okay. No pressure.
The only member of the public. I'll wait.
And now we'll close public comment. Move on to agenda item number 4, which is approval of the minutes. Does anyone have a motion or comments on agenda item 4.1 for the Reno City Planning Commission February 2nd, 2022 meeting?
Commissioner Draculich, I move to approve the minutes from the February 2nd meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Villanueva, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Villanueva. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is the Planning Commission Training Series. We have the APA video presentation on roles and responsibilities and discussion.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jason Garcia-Lebu, Planning Manager for the City of Reno. We're really excited to bring this APA video series to your commission. There's about 8 different videos. They range in times from 5 minutes to about half hour. Tonight's is about 20 minutes. So with that, we'll cue it up.
The Planning Officials Training Program was developed by seasoned planners from across the country, all experts in training local planning officials. It is supported and presented by the American Planning Association, the national organization that is devoted to creating communities of lasting value for everyone. Our more than 40,000 members are made up of planners, commissioners, public officials, educators, students, and engaged citizens who are committed to creating vital communities. 40% of our members have attained required education, professional experience, and passed a rigorous exam to become certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners. The Planning Officials Training Program aims to provide the essential information, insights, and sound practices applicable to better decision-making for those who serve as appointed planning and zoning officials for their communities. The use of planning officials throughout the presentations is a universal term used to group audiences of elected and appointed officials, planning commissioners, and boards of zoning appeals. Each state may vary on the term used to distinguish these members. For that reason, this program references planning officials and commissioners interchangeably. Throughout the videos, we use terms to describe these officials and their actions that may differ from what is used in your state. Though the terms may differ, the lessons are universal. There is no one-size-fits-all training for planning officials, so check local state codes or state-enabling legislation for relevancy to your community. If there are any questions about what is appropriate or legal in your community, we encourage you to ask your local staff.
So you're on this planning commission, or planning and zoning commission, or plan commission, or zoning commission, depends on where you live, what they call them. But it's really a group of citizens that are appointed primarily by the city council. Some counties have zoning bodies as well, but they actually perform both required and discretionary functions in land use matters, and we'll talk about that. So the main responsibilities and activities of Planning Commission are implementing the land use patterns. That's looking at whether the comprehensive plan is being used and how the comprehensive plan has suggested in a future land use map how the zoning patterns should be in the future. It's not a zoning map, but it may look like one. You also are looking as a planning commissioner at the current zoning ordinance, particularly as you're applying it for various cases to see if it meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance, but also to find out if there are problems in the zoning ordinance and that you might want to make a recommendation for change. Start with staff on that if you are concerned about it. Often you, as a planning and zoning commissioner, you're part of the process of developing and updating the comprehensive plans. In some cases, planning and zoning commissions are asked to be a part of the annexation process by making recommendations on that. But one of your important jobs is to interface with the public on community values. You can go to public meetings, you can go to focus groups and neighborhood organizations. But when you do that, your job there is to listen and to tell people what the process is if they have questions. In a lot of communities that are concerned about their visual image and urban design, that job a lot of time falls to the Planning Commission to encourage and be sure that the land use issues that are coming in front of you do address the concerns that the community has for visual image. In a lot of communities, planning commissions develop and adopt a work plan for annual work, and that's if they want to update the zoning ordinance or they're going to review the comprehensive plan, and that should all be put together in an annual work report. So the orientation for Planning Commission, when you go on to Planning Commission for the first time, or even if you're not remembering all the issues that you need to cover, become acquainted with the following. They're legal issues. All your meetings should be subject to what is called the Open Meetings Act. You're not to meet in private. You meet in a meeting that's been posted and has an exact location on a regular basis. So the basic elements we talked earlier, comprehensive planning, zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations. In your community, you should have copies of those documents. All the states have enabling statutes for planning and zoning in their state statutes. Texas, we have 211, 212, and 213 of the Texas Local Government Code. Planning and Zoning Commission should also be identified in the city's charter as to their duties and responsibilities. And some of that comes with attending meetings and being there and making those decisions. As we talked earlier, more than just the zoning regulations and subdivision regulations, there's a complete code of ordinance for your governmental body, and you should be familiar with those because sometimes the plat or the zoning ordinance cross-references with another zoning ordinance. But you should have bylaws or rules of procedure for your Planning Commission meeting and how it should be conducted, and how you speak at a meeting, and how you make your motions for approval. So it's important that you really need to be familiar with your responsibilities, both on and off the commission. If you're missing a lot of meetings or can't attend, then perhaps you should have someone else on the commission. But you need to be there regularly for meetings, and it's very important. So we look at hopefully planning commissioners being visionary, that you can really understand your community, or at least a portion of your community, your problems and your potentials for the city. Because one thing, as a previous planning commissioner chair told me, as a planning commission, you are representatives of the whole city. You're a committee of the whole city. You're not just your little neighborhood or your area, but you have to vote on these cases, and you have to vote on them as a representative of your area, as a part of the whole city, which means you need to see the big picture. Hopefully you don't have any conflicts of interest. Conflicts of interest are usually financial, or you live in the area too close to the zoning case or the subdivision plat. You want to be impartial and objective. In other words, you can't get too personal, whether it's with the the person, or what the objective of. You may not agree with what they're doing, but you have to be objective. So you're always working toward that common good. That's that committee of a whole. And you want to put the community interest really ahead of the others. Sometimes a neighborhood interest is in conflict with the community interest as a whole. Main thing, you need to come to the meeting prepared. You need to have read your materials that are sent to you in advance of the meeting. You want to appreciate that dialogue. You want to collaborate. It's very important. You've got to be practical. The city can and can't do certain things. There are expectations that sometimes are not realistic. But if you look at trying to be how something can be done within the confines of the zoning regulations or the subdivision regulations, you need to generally be very consistent. If you've looked at something one way, you need to think about how you look at it in all the other similar cases. It's very important for you all as planning commissioners to understand how a meeting works and what they should be. And most all planning and zoning commission meetings are public meetings, and that they still serve the public interest just by the very nature of having them, of their existence. They should be open to everybody, and notices should all go out to property owners, as well as being following all the public notice procedures, where in newspaper and now online. So really your responsibility as a planning commissioner, you need to look at being prepared. You need to read the materials prior to the meeting. The worst noises we used to hear at planning commissioners when the planning commissioner opened their envelope that they'd gotten their whole packet in, and it was the first time they'd looked at anything. You need to understand your codes and ordinances, particularly your comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance. If possible, you should visit the site, unless you're not allowed to. Some cities don't allow you anything outside of the meetings. You should always contact staff if you have questions, and always before. You don't want to blindside them at a meeting, because really, staff is your friend in this, and not an adversary. And I want to really encourage you to play an active part in your meetings. You need to ask questions. And if you're not asking the question for yourself, you sometimes need to ask it for somebody else. We used to have a few planning commissioners when I was on the plan commission that just kind of glazed over in meetings, and you knew they weren't understanding it. And a very dear friend of mine, Commissioner, he had a suggestion, and he would say, can we have an educational moment, and make staff explain to us what was going on. Mine, as being the only planner that had been on plan commission, I would ask staff to please clarify or remind me of what this issue was. So that helped fellow commissioners that don't, and particularly so they don't feel left out. So that's being active. you need to tell the staff when you're not going to be there on be there, and you need to be there on time, because a lot of meetings require the quorum to be present before they can even start. So you need to listen to everybody, particularly you'll listen to the staff report. The applicant will present their case. The public has the time in most of your meetings to ask questions or make statements. Again, back to always asking questions. Used to be an old saying that said the only dumb question was the question you didn't ask. So, and you also need to consider the project's relationship to the comprehensive and other plans. All right, it's really important because a lot of times you're contacted by a friend or a neighbor or somebody you meet in the grocery store, and your job as a commissioner is to, first of all, suggest that they attend the meeting or the hearings or send their comments to staff. It's kind of a dangerous situation sometimes when you're in a grocery store and your neighbor comes up to you and they want to tell you all about this case, and you stand there and you go, yeah, ooh. And so then later you go to the meeting and you vote at the meeting, and this neighbor attacks you, gets really mad at you. You said you were going to vote for my case. And just because you sat there and listened to them, they thought you, and made positive comments. So just stick to trying to tell them to attend the meeting and to provide their comments. You don't want to discuss that at the grocery store or church or parties, and people will try to get you. You need to disclose any ex parte contact, and David's going to talk more about that later. Just don't talk outside the meeting, basically. Avoid contact that could ultimately invalidate your determination. We found one group I heard of, we had a planning commissioner that he actually voted on his employer's cases for several years, and those were found later that they could have invalidated all of the cases that he voted. Right? Meeting management and conduct. I want you to behave. So it's always important, even though you could get excited, to remain calm. That's kind of, you want to be appropriately behavior. It's hard for all of us to sometimes leave our personal bias at the door, but we really are a community, committee of the whole community, and so we should be respectful of all aspects of the community. It's really hard, sometimes more for staff than for planning commissioners, to avoid using jargon. We use SUPs and other terms that are not understandable to the public. So be willing to not talk down to the public, but to explain sometimes, or ask for an explanation of what the jargon is. All your comments should be made on the record. Do not text in meetings. Because that's actually making a comment, but you always want to try to be fair and listen to everybody and make an impartial decision. And all of these will help you function while you're providing an important service to your community. Really, to have a good meeting, basically a lot of cities use Robert's Rules of Orders. It should be the guidelines. Either you have that or local procedures. And a lot of times the decisions that you make depend on that leadership you have as a chair of the commission. The chair really sets the tone for the meeting, should control the meeting and ensure that everybody gets to talk, and sometimes has to bring the focus back to what the topic is, and keep the meeting moving, and always assure that the votes are properly done. Like I said, Robert's Rules give structure to the hearing. You don't want to get into the details of parliamentary procedure, and you also have to consider how to mitigate the impacts raised by the public. Those may come to you as a surprise sometimes, and you need to be sure that staff and the other commissioners as well as the public understand what's being discussed. You don't want to debate with the public or the applicant, or you can make your comments later after the motion's been made. You need to be sure you've got all the information needed to make the decision, and sometimes it's necessary to actually not make that decision that day, but to continue the hearing to obtain more information. To have a fair hearing, really everybody needs to have the right to talk and be heard. Sometimes when you have a huge meeting, we had like 120 people at a public hearing one time that all wanted to speak, and the chair was able to suggest that they should say that their comments have already been made, or to have the group stand and be recognized as all supporting or in opposition to a case. You need to be sure that the testimonies that people are giving are relevant, not that they get off on some tangent or something that doesn't apply to the meeting that's in hand. Because you really are weighing all the cases against the standards that you have for review. Zoning cases have specific procedures. Subdivision regulations have specific procedures. In most states, subdivisions have to be approved if they meet the requirements of their subdivision regulations. Not whether you don't like the street name or the applicant, the standards apply. You should have heard all of the necessary testimony when you begin to vote. And it doesn't matter if you have 2 people for and 20 people against. It's all in what the evidence that's presented, the case that's presented, how staff presents their case to you, and how you discuss it in the meeting with your fellow planning commissioners. So now in a meeting, you want it to follow a general path. So which meeting should open with the chairman describing the rules, and that the chairman will read the request or the zoning case. And then usually staff presents a report, and then the applicant can present their report. Then you can have the questions, or those people that are in opposition or in favor of, they can speak. Time limits should be provided. And then the chair will restate the question, and that's the time either with the motion being made or a time frame for questions to be asked. Usually the questions are asked before, but they can be discussed after the motion's been made. Again, the chair gets to restate that request, and the commission will vote based on the standards and the information that's been provided to them. Your decisions need to be really based on what you understand to be the correct procedure for the case. When you look at voting, you want to discuss that standards of review we talked about. You don't always have to agree. We had an awful lot of split decisions when I was on the Planning Commission. And that was actually good, because it meant everybody got into the discussion. Because we really do have to vote as the whole commission, not just on one person's opinion. And you really want to keep an open mind before you vote. I had a really pretty terrible case one time where there was a lot of opposition, there was a lot of misinformation out, and I went to the meeting thinking I knew how I was going to vote. And when I heard the case, and when I heard the opposition, when I heard the proponents, I totally changed the way I was going to vote. And you have to be willing to do that. That's why you don't tell people in advance how you're going to vote, because that will get you into trouble with them later. You need to recognize, again, as we talked about, that the audience or the people that are there to speak don't always represent all the views in the community. And you don't try in any way to exceed the authority granted by the codes or your statutes or your meeting procedures.
So with that, hopefully that was informational to the commission. But if there's any questions of staff or if there's any discussion, feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you very much. Is that these going to be a regular thing we see at every meeting?
Not every meeting. We're going to try to sprinkle it throughout. So hopefully it's not a half hour every meeting. So probably every couple months or so.
Awesome, thank you. We'll now move to agenda item 6, public hearings. We'll start with agenda item 6.1. Open the hearing for case number LDC 22-00047. Do we have a presentation from staff?
We're going to start with the applicant, so we're
My
just
apologies,
moving
yeah.
everybody over just one moment. Hi, John, can you hear us? We can't hear you. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Nope.
Can't hear.
John, are you working on your sound? Nod yes.
John, are you there? This is Chris Fairchild. I'm working with Raymond Handling and John Kruponic on this. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear
We
you.
can hear you. We're just waiting for John.
Okay, great.
John, can you call in?
I'm calling him right now.
No, he's calling.
Chris,
Hey, John, how we doing? Can you hear?
I'm on tell the commission. I can hear everything you guys are saying.
Can you
We can hear you now, John, so I don't know where the sound's coming from, if it's coming from.
guys hear John now?
Yeah, but Chris, that's not the way to do this because you have to put me on your speaker that way. I am hearing everything since 6 o'clock. I dialed it into the Zoom meeting, the 669 number. That's on my Bluetooth. And then I have the video on my computer, and it's somehow we got an issue.
Can you hear John through my phone, everyone?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear John through yours, Chris.
Why don't we just do that, John?
Okay.
Unless you're getting some kind of reverb or something.
Yeah, I think it's going to be weird audio, but weird audio, but.
John, can you share your screen and then you can start your presentation?
Who's sharing the screen, Joey or John? Oh, there we go.
John, can you make the screen a little bit bigger, please? Thank you.
Is that okay, Michelle?
Yeah, that looks good. So when you start, I'll start the timer, okay?
Thank you. Let's go ahead and go with it. Good evening, Commissioners. John Krumpatek representing the applicant for 975 Terminal. You heard from Chris Fairchild, his broker, and a key part of the team with us this evening. This is a conditional use permit to allow for heavy machinery and equipment rental, sales, and service. That's the best fit determination and classification of this use in our table of uses in the code in the ME zone. There's a good location map to show you just south of Mill Street on Terminal. By way of zoning, interesting mix of zoning. You see ME and IC primarily dominate the zoning in this particular area. We happen to fall in ME, which creates the need for this CUP. Here's a bit about Raymond West. They do wholesale distribution and servicing of Raymond equipment, which is to perform material handling, commonly known as small forklifts in warehouses. As you know, they probably have a pretty good book of business given all the warehouse business that's going on in our region. Secondary products include warehouse racking and conveyor systems. So the conditional use permit request is to allow for the forklift servicing and part sales on site. Although intuitively it's not heavy equipment, it's a small forklift operation, all battery operated, all contained indoors. But again, by way of description and best fit in our nomenclature in our code, that's the way it's been determined. So in the last paragraph, you would note heavy equipment, heavy machinery and equipment rental, sales, and service is allowed by right in IC, the mixed use airport. I note that MA zone because it's in the vicinity, but it requires this CUP in the ME zone. There's our site plan. I'll show you a few pictures, but I think certainly we view this as a great opportunity to get what is a very dilapidated, rundown site and building and very poor landscaping. It's old school by any measure, which means there wasn't a lot of code requirements. So you can see the landscape planter area that we've beefed up in width and surface area to add street trees, and also every single pocket we could find on the site to add planter islands. The short story is going from 2 to 31 trees. In addition, a lot of parking lot improvements and overall refacing of the property. There you go. In site photos, you can see there's essentially zero landscaping of any significance, alligator cracking in all of the parking areas, as noted on the photos. The one lower left is the rear building, and then the one on the upper left is the primary building for the office. And from the street, you can see that, again, all of that landscaping that we've not put on the landscape plan, that will be a nice presentation from the street with all that canopy tree cover that will happen on Terminal Way there. A little bit about their operation. It gives you a feel. Again, you see the largest photo on the left. That is one of their battery operated forklifts, and you can get a sense of their operation and see an idea there. Operational photos. So with that, I would share with the commission that we are in complete agreement with staff in the analysis and the conditions of approval. And I would just leave it at that for any questions for the commission. Thank you. Chris, did you have anything? Actually, we'll just wait and for any questions if they're targeted on your role here, Chris. Thank you.
Does that conclude the presentation?
Looks like it. Joey, are you ready to present?
Yes, and I hope you all can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, I've
Loud
been
and
having
clear.
some audio issues as well. I've heard I sound a bit muffled, so we're doing our best.
Great, thank you.
You just muted yourself.
I would like to unmute myself.
There you go.
And can you all see my screen, I hope?
Yes.
And we'll go from there. Hi, everyone. Joey Winter. I'm an associate planner with the Department of Development Services, for the record. This is my first time up here, so nice to see everyone. I'm here to present on this conditional use permit for 975 Terminal Way. As you've heard, and if I can get to the next slide here, this is the site. You'll see general area north, you have the Grand Sierra. To the east and to the south is Reno Tahoe Airport, and then I-580 to the west. Zooming in closer, you will see it's on the west side of Terminal Way. You have Mill Street to the north and Vassar to the south. Here's a street view of what the site currently looks like. You'll see that there's two buildings existing on site that will be used. The one up front is sort of an office to the street, and then you have the rear building with some bay doors on them there. So the zoning of this site is mixed employment. The zoning in the area is a mix of mixed employment, which is the purple on your screen, and then industrial commercial, which is the gray. The only other zoning in the area really is north of Mill Street. You have some of that mixed use urban zoning, which is the red hatched area. The applicant is requesting, as you've heard, a conditional use permit specifically for heavy machinery and equipment rental, sale, and service. The aspect of their operations which fall under that would be the forklift servicing and repair. All the other uses proposed on site, be it warehousing, storage, office, are allowed by right. And then the key issues identified by staff during the review of this permit would be compatibility with the surrounding zoning and uses, and then just general site design and code conformance. So moving on, you'll see again, the zoning is mixed employment. The intent of that mixed employment zoning, reading directly from the code, the mixed employment district is intended to provide a mix of employment focuses such as light manufacturing, processing, wholesaling, flex space, research and development, and offices. I'd call your attention there to that light manufacturing. Really any use that the code considers more intense than that is allowed by right in industrial commercial zoning or straight up industrial zoning. And the use here that we're talking about tonight is heavy machinery and equipment rental, sales, and service. That's the direct name in the code. And the definition reading from the code, which you saw earlier, would be a facility for the display, sale, and rental of tools, heavy machinery, dump trucks, or commercial and heavy equipment, such as those used in building construction, farming, restaurants, or manufacturing. So the code considers that more intense than what's allowed by right in the mixed employment district, and therefore a conditional use permit is triggered so we can mitigate some of the impacts of that use. Going to mitigation to highlight some of it, you will see the landscaping improvements, which Mr. Krompatek touched on earlier. Those are required by condition 1 and then some general requirements in the zoning code. You have no outdoor display or repair of machinery being allowed. That is by condition 5. If you look at the rear building right here is where the applicant currently proposes their operation for the use which triggers the SUP, which would be the conditional use permit, which would be the repair and servicing of forklifts. There's also some frontage improvements required. You can see this is what the site currently looks like. I'll call your attention right here to that asphalt sidewalk along Terminal Way. That does not meet city code. That is not what we want, and that will be going away through condition 7. And then just to touch on landscaping one more time, I will go back to the site. A current requirement for a new undeveloped site would be 30 feet of front yard fully landscaped in mixed employment zoning. That is not what we're getting here. But what we're going from is basically zero landscaping. Zero landscaping to some landscaping, which is an improvement and is what we want in a reuse site. So that's an overview of the presentation. Here's an abridged version of the conditional use permit findings. staff can make all the findings on this case. I'd be happy to go into any in detail if necessary. Just let me know. In closing, here's the recommended motion. The recommended motion is for approval. And that concludes my presentation. I would like to thank Kyle Chisholm, who did the heavy lifting in terms of staff analysis on this case. And thanks for bearing with me, and I'm available to answer any questions you may.
Thank you so much. We'll now bring it back to the commission for disclosures. Start with Commissioner Draculich.
I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Villanueva.
Commissioner Villanueva, I visited the site.
Commissioner Munoz, I am familiar with the site.
Commissioner Gower, I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Velto, I visited the site. We'll now open up public comments. Michelle, have we received any requests to speak forms?
I did not receive any request to speak forms for this item. No correspondence was received and no voicemails were received.
Great, thank you. Anyone in the public like to speak? Thank you. In that case, we'll take it back to the commission for questions.
Do you want to close public
Oh, my
comment?
apologies. We'll close public comments and bring it back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Villanueva?
No questions, just a couple comments, but
Please.
I can wait. I just want to say I appreciate the repurposing of this building for the use, and I am glad to see condition number 5, because that would have been my concern, would be the outdoor display of the machinery. But for the most part, I think appreciate the improvement to landscaping. Thanks.
Villanueva? Any other comments or a motion?
Commissioner Munoz, I'm ready to make a motion.
Please.
In the case LDC 22-00047975 Terminal Way, based on compliance with applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit subject to conditions listed in the staff reports, and I can make all the findings.
Thank you, Commissioner Munoz. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Draculich, I second.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Good luck with your project, and thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Move on to agenda item 6.2, which is case number LDC 22-00044 Coral Academy rezoning. Do we have a presentation from the applicant?
I think we're waiting for Mike Rayleigh. Mike, can you hear us?
Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Mike Rayleigh for the record with Christie Corporation. Let me share my screen and I will get a PowerPoint up and running here. Great. Hopefully everybody can see that. Good evening once again for the record, Mike Rayleigh with Christie Corporation here representing Coral Academy. The request before you tonight is a zoning map amendment to rezone 2.95 acres from neighborhood commercial to specific plan district. The project site, if you're familiar with the former Kmart building and the former 24-hour fitness up in Northwest Reno off Sky Mountain Drive, this site contains the former 24-hour fitness gymnasium, which has been vacant now for about 18 months, I believe. This gives you kind of an aerial view. If you had a chance to visit the site, you'll see that the former Kmart is now an indoor storage facility, and there are multifamily units that were constructed in the parking lot that served the Kmart previously. The building on site is currently vacant. The site is fully developed. All the parking is in and whatnot. Actually, if you look at the 24-hour fitness that was formerly down on Neal Road, that has also been repurposed as a Coral Academy as well. So they're confident that this building will well suit their needs. From a zoning perspective, as I mentioned, the site is currently zoned NC. NC allows for a variety of uses. A school is not one of those. Schools are fairly limited in what zones they can be in. So after meeting with city staff, we determined that the SPD approach was a good tool for this project. The SPD creates a custom tailored zoning that will allow for the K through 12 school. However, we have put in a provision in the SPD that would prohibit any public school use. So it would be limited to private and charter schools only. And the reason being that way you wouldn't have a traffic associated with buses and higher enrollments that might create conflicts within the neighborhood. In addition, the SPD has specific standards related to the school uses to ensure that all impacts are mitigated and that the use remains complementary to the surrounding area. Whoop, apologize for that. As part of this, we've worked with Grace very closely. She's done a great job working with us, and we developed a safe route to school plan with the Washington County School District. I believe that's included in your packet. A traffic impact analysis will be required prior to the school taking occupancy of the building. And as part of that, there'll be limitations on the maximum enrollment. We will be providing new crosswalks and pedestrian improvements to Sky Mountain Drive, including pedestrian flashers, a drop-off and pickup plan. And actually, if you've been out to the site, you can see it. The current configuration works well for a drop-off and pickup circulation. The building is set way back from the street, which allows the cars to circulate in and out without backing onto the adjoining roadways. We're also limiting any outdoor playgrounds. They will not be located adjacent to residential uses. There is some multifamily use to the east. And any expansion of the building footprint would require additional supplemental review in terms of a site plan review. The plan is to remodel the existing building and add a second interior level, but no expansion of the footprint itself at this time. And the SPD generally adopts the current NC standards and allowed uses. So if the school were to vacate the premises at some point, it would kind of be the status quo of what would be allowed currently. So with that, I'll wrap up my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you, Mike. Is there a presentation from staff? Grace?
Yes, let me share my screen. You guys see that okay?
Yes, go ahead.
You never know. Okay, Grace Whited, Assistant Planner for the record, here to discuss the Coral Academy Specific Plan District. So the subject site is located in Northwest Reno, northwest of Sky Mountain Drive, south of I-80, east of McCarran Boulevard. The applicant is requesting the approval of a zone change from neighborhood commercial to a specific plan district, as Mike discussed. Key issues identified during review were compatibility with surrounding land uses and master plan conformance. The site is currently zoned neighborhood commercial. This area has general commercial to the west, MF21 to the east, and some single family zoning to the south. Specific plan districts are intended to facilitate targeted variations from the uses and standards of a base zoning designation that's compatible with the surrounding land uses. So it's really a unique situation that builds from that base NC zoning district. The proposed specific plan district would allow for neighborhood commercial uses and then the addition of that private primary school with a maximum enrollment of 800 students. So the master plan for this site is suburban mixed use, which is compatible with specific plan district zoning. There's multiple master plan policies that support this zone change, and those are provided in the staff report. Here's a Google Street image to kind of get you better oriented with the site. It's that it previously was that 24-hour fitness we discussed. And then this is the view from I-80. I'm sure many of you drive past this every day, just to kind of show how a school would fit in and be compatible with the area. So as stated before, this zone change will retain those NC lot and building standards and the uses with the addition of that private primary school use. And so this kind of shows the comparison of how the things will remain the same. So for this project, we have zoning map amendment findings and specific plan district findings. Staff was able to make all the findings for this project and recommends approval. Here's the recommended motion, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you so much. We'll come back to the commission for disclosures. Commissioner Munoz.
Commissioner Munoz, I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Villanueva, familiar with the site.
Thank you.
Commissioner Draculich, I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Gower.
Commissioner Gower, same disclosures.
Commissioner Veltos, familiar with the site. I believe my law firm used to represent Coral Academy, but I don't believe we do now. And I've conferred with legal counsel and it's not a conflict. We'll now open up public comment. Michelle, did you receive any request to speak forms?
I did not receive any request to speak forms. No correspondence or voicemails were received.
Thank you. Would anyone in the public like to speak? Thank you. We'll close public comment. Come back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Villanueva.
Thank you, Chairman. Question for the planner, the planner, yeah, thank you. What would happen if, so for example, right now, Coral Academy, they want to convert this to a school, but what happened if that fell through and that, they decided to sell the property? What would happen with that SPD zone change?
So the SPD would remain in place. So the SPD allows for other uses. It's not specific to a school. So they could do anything allowed under those NC zoning district. And then if they ever wanted to get rid of the SPD zoning, they would have to come back in front of Planning Commission and City Council to do a complete zone change again.
Okay, so the NC would stay in place. So they would just be able to use everything that's in place right now with the NC. But how would the SPD apply? Would it apply at all, or would it limit them? Would it expand their? How would it expand?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Grace Whited again, Assistant Planner. The SPD would remain in place. There's some specific standards. Most of them are specific to a school. There's like a general statement at the beginning of the handbook that anything not addressed, you would revert back to the code as amended. And so anything that's not specifically addressed in that handbook, they would defer to NC or applicable zoning in the code at that time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Munoz.
Commissioner Munoz, this is going to be for Mike. You had said in your presentation that no playgrounds or anything will be allowed next to the residential areas to the, I guess that'd be the east. Is there something in plan for outdoor recreation playgrounds, any like that in the works, or?
Not at this point, but it could be added at the future. And if it did, it would be either located on the north or the west side of the building away from those residential areas, just to make sure that there wouldn't be any noise impacts.
Okay, so you're talking the I-80 side or the storage unit side is where something would be added
Correct.
if it was?
That's
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Draculich, question for Mike. I know you guys in the development standards here are addressing that, approval of, basically traffic and parking would come to us later, but what would we expect down the road? One question, how much staff would be parking there? And then it's saying that we have about 640 peak AM trips. I guess my main concern is, will we have some spill out onto Sky Mountain? What would that look like? What's the plan in advance right now?
So there's a couple of ways to address that. The parking is actually overparked basically for a school if you look at the existing on-site parking. And as I mentioned, the fact that building is set kind of up at the northern portion of the site allows traffic to come in and out. The other consideration on those peak hour trips is they can do what's called a staggered start. So for example, the kindergarten can get dropped off earlier than the grade school, and then a middle school would be later. So kind of the same way the school district does it, and that helps the traffic flow in and out. But prior to taking occupancy of the building, we'll have to do a traffic study that documents all that and look to see if there's any improvements that need to be made, whether it's a deceleration lane to allow cars to stack, but we don't anticipate that being necessary given the lower number of students than a standard school.
Thank you. That pretty much answered the question. I know we're not quite there yet, but that's the thing that jumps out at me when I read this is if we've got some heavy flow backed up on the main road, that would be a problem for the neighbors. So thank you. I know we'll address that later.
Great.
Commissioner Gower, do you have any questions?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question about one of the supplemental use standards. For enrollment, it says that the facility will be limited to no more than 800 students. That seems rather high for that square footage. Am I misunderstanding that, or what is expected for
that would be with even to include any future expansion areas, and we kind of went through that. And to be honest with you, some of that number comes based on traffic and the ability to make sure that we aren't creating those impacts. So after meeting with staff, that was a number that was agreed upon that could adequately be accommodated in there without creating any additional impacts to the surrounding area. So like I say, still significantly smaller than a public school.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wetaweba?
I was just going to say that was a good question. I'm glad you caught that because that's really valid.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
Commissioner Draculich, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Please.
In the matter of case number LDC 22-00044 Coral Academy rezoning, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the zoning map amendment by ordinance.
Mr. Gower, I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you and good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Commissioner. For the record, Phase Tendogan, Executive Director, Coral Academy of Science. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 6.3, case number LDC 22-00037 Coyote Crossing. We have a presentation from the applicant.
Mike, are you ready to present?
Yep. Good evening. Once again, Mike Raley with Christie Corporation, here representing project applicant. Let me get my slideshow started here. This is a request for a tentative subdivision map for 33 single-family units, along with a major site plan review for cluster development, fills in excess of 10 feet, and hillside development. Although I think, as you'll see through the presentation, that hillside development, it does meet the requirements, but it is a little bit unique in terms of we aren't disturbing any hillside areas. The project site is located at the terminus of Rockchuck Road in Panther Valley, consists of about 8.76 acres. If you had a chance to visit the site, you'll see that the adjoining property to the east is currently under development with single family use. And then the Panther View Highlands tentative map was approved last year on this area that I'm circling in my cursor here. So this project essentially represents the build out, so to speak, of that neighborhood. It is currently vacant. There's some, kind of gives you a picture. The northern half of the site is actually zoned open space. When we came through the zoning process a couple of years ago, we agreed that that would be zoned open space and that will remain undisturbed as part of this map. But when you incorporate that, it just barely pushes it over the hillside development qualification, so to speak. But as you can see here in the zoning, the majority of the site, SF6, with the balance of parks, greenways, and open space, which will remain exactly that without any development. Excuse me, SF8, I said SF6, I apologize. This is the site plan. So essentially, Rockchuck gets extended into and dead ends in a cul-de-sac with the homes along the cul-de-sac itself. We'll have a nice landscape entry feature. And then because this is a private street, we have provided some additional guest parking here at the entrance. Each house will have a 2-car garage and driveway. Just some overall stats and figures, as I mentioned, just under 9 acres, 33 total lots. Our average overall density is 3.77 units per acre. So it's actually a fairly low density subdivision. And the reason being that really about, over nearly half, a little over half the area is common area and open space. 51%. That was my next slide. All the impacts are definitely mitigated. This is very consistent with what's going on in the neighborhood in terms of new construction and what's already constructed. The improvements to Rock Chuck Road will actually enhance the neighborhood. If you had a chance to be out there, there's really only a half street improvement that exists now. So that will be fully constructed to city standards. We feel the landscaping will enhance the overall aesthetics of the neighborhood. And I think more importantly, this provides a unique single family opportunity. It's an infill project. It will provide for some more attainable housing that's really hard to find in that area now. And we think it's a great opportunity. And it's a local builder developer with experience in other projects in Panther Valley. So with that, I'll wrap up my presentation. Jason Gillis with Tech Engineering, the project engineer, is also on the Zoom if you have any specific design questions, and we're both here to answer any concerns that you might have. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Grace, do we have a presentation?
Yes. All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Grace White, Assistant Planner for the record, here to discuss Coyote Crossing. So the subject site is in Panther Valley, northwest of the terminus of Rock Chuck Road, approximately 180 feet west of its intersection with Lighton Road. The applicant is requesting the approval of a tentative map for 33 single-family lots and a major site plan review to allow cluster development, fills greater than 10 feet in height, and hillside development. Key issues identified in this request were grading, protection of sensitive areas, and site design. So as discussed, the site is currently split zoned with about 5.5 acres zoned single family 8 units per acre on the south end of the site, and about just over 3 acres of parks, greenways, and open space on the north. We'll talk about it later, but that zoning was very intentional to protect the steeper slopes and then provide an additional buffer for the existing neighborhoods to the north. So the master plan is also zoned split zone, which was intentional to preserve those open space, significant slopes, excuse me. And then it provides that buffer, and this was the zone change was done about a couple of years ago, as Mike had previously discussed. So this is their proposed site plan that's consolidated to that single family portion of the site. They're proposing 33 single family lots utilizing cluster development standards. So code does allow for cluster development when it preserves natural or sensitive features, which this does. And then condition 7 requires the applicant to landscape this southern portion, although this site plan doesn't reflect it. And this will help buffer the neighborhood or the neighbor to the south, and then help buffer the future residents from the railroad that's also to the south. So here's a Google Street View at the end of Rock Chuck. You can see that the slopes are fairly minimal, but once the slope analysis was done, it does barely qualify for hillside development. This did further restrict their development, and so they were able to do what they could with this area, qualifying with that hillside development at just over 13% slope. So for this project, there's tentative map, general findings, major site plan review, and cluster development findings. Staff was able to make all applicable findings. Here is the recommended motion, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. We'll bring it back to the commission for disclosures. Start with Commissioner Draculich.
Commissioner Draculich, no disclosures.
Commissioner Villanueva.
Commissioner Villanueva, I visited the site.
Commissioner Munoz.
Commissioner Munoz, I have previously visited the site.
Commissioner Gower.
Commissioner Gower, I visited the site.
Commissioner Velto, familiar with the site. Now move to public comment. Or Michelle, are there any requests to speak forms?
I did not receive requests to speak forms, no voicemails, and no correspondence was received.
Great, thank you. Anyone in our audience like to speak? Okay, thank you. We'll close public comments and come back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Villanueva.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner Villanueva, for the record, this is for the planner. So I'm looking at the background. It says that in 2018, the city council they approved an amendment. So at one point, that space was open greenways and open space, correct? And then since 2018, that's now been changed to the current cluster development that we're allowing for now. Is that right?
No, so the cluster development is what they're proposing to do now, and that's just a technique that they're using to utilize smaller lots than what would normally be allowed. Prior to 2018, I believe there was still some single-family neighborhood zoning on this lot. They just amended it to change the amount of each zoning district in this lot, but the cluster development is part of the development that they're utilizing. Mike has
Thank you.
something to add.
I appreciate
If you like, I have some background on it since I did the zone change. I might be able to give you a little bit of the history. That site was originally included in unincorporated Washoe County. And so when the county did the zoning, they did not, at the time, it went way back over 20 years, did not do it based on accurate topographic data. They did it off of USGS maps, which are notoriously kind of inaccurate. So when it was brought into the city, it did have some single family zoning, and that zone change process essentially refined the zoning that was on the property and defined the boundary between the residential zoning and the open space.
Okay, so single family would have been permitted as a matter of right, but this is for a request for cluster development, and then of course the filling and the hillside development. Okay, and so thank you for bearing with me. I just want to make sure I understand. Are there gonna be any, it didn't look like it, but I just want to clarify, are there gonna be any drainage ways, any interference with drainage ways or anything like that? Okay. Because when I visited the site, it did look like there was a bowl, but I think that was a different development. Is that correct? This isn't on a bowl. It's pretty, I mean, other than the minor hillside, it's pretty flat.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, so thank you. Those are my questions.
Commissioner Draculich?
Commissioner Draculich, question for Grace. I guess just when I'm looking at it, we feel good about a big old fire truck turning around in that cul-de-sac if needed.
Yeah, fire did review it. It meets their standards, but these homes will also be sprinklered.
Oh, excellent.
So they are comfortable with that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple follow-up questions to the conversation here. Mike, Commissioner Villanueva asked about the improvements on Rock Chuck, and I noted that when I was out there too, that, you know, it's a half street with no curb cut on the north side. Can you just remind us what the time frame is for those improvements and who's responsible for doing that? Is it part of this development, or was that from the previous approvals there on Rock Chuck?
It's actually in portions. Will be the adjoining two projects are required to make those improvements in front of theirs, and those are actually underway now. We'll be required to finish that off, so to speak, and that will have to be done concurrently with our development at our expense.
Okay, so at the end of the day, Rock Chuck will be a legitimate 2-lane street.
It'll be constructed
City of Reno engineering standards.
Full city standards, exactly.
Sidewalks on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Just to follow up on the fire truck turnaround question, I think that's a good one. And Grace, maybe you can chime in terms of the response time. And then I'd just be curious if, in general, when we sprinkler buildings, and Mike, you brought it up in your presentation that we're trying to hit the missing middle with this housing product. I'm curious of how, Mike, if you've done any sort of analysis on how sprinklering affects affordability. So maybe I'll ask Grace just about the response time, and then Mike, you can chime in on potential affordability impacts.
Sure.
Yeah, let me pull up the response time. I know it's just outside of their response time, I believe. And that was part of the reason they had to sprinkle these buildings. I can pull up the exact response time as Mike answers your second question.
Okay. I apologize if I missed that in the staff report, Grace.
Yeah, no, the fire sprinklers are becoming more and more common nowadays, and we're finding I'm hearing from builders that it's really not that much. In fact, the developer said they add about a 1% to the total cost of construction. So it's really negligible in terms of an impact to the pricing of the home. So we don't have any objections to that and still think that we can meet the market demands.
Okay. Great. Thanks for that feedback, Mike.
And to respond to the response time, it would be 6 minutes. And that's in part of the fire's comments on this case. And then the second closest station would be about 11 minutes.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Appreciate it, Grace and Mike. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I've got right now.
Commissioner Velto, since we're talking about that turnaround area, are there going to be signs there that say not to park? I know I've seen, haven't exactly seen this design of a neighborhood anytime recently, but sometimes you see like a big circular turnaround area and people will park at that point. Do you see that as a concern if there was a fire, or do you see people trying to park in that area and go into the houses nearby?
It's not a condition for them to put those signs up. I'm definitely open to adding that as a condition if it suits you, the body. It would be it would be a red curb. It wouldn't be parking that's part of the development, but we could definitely add a condition to put up signs.
Oh, so it will be red? Okay.
Yes, because it won't be there's only a few designated parking spaces for this development, and those are on more towards the entrance of the site. Mm-hmm. And so this wouldn't be a designated parking area.
Okay, great.
If I could just add to, because this was a private street, it was our plan to have a sign, a no outlet sign, as well as a no parking signs. And then that turnaround is actually oversized to make sure that even if a car was there, a truck could get turned around in there.
Okay. Would you be opposed to a sign that says no parking?
No, we'd accept an additional condition to require that. That's no problem on our end.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Dracklich, while we're hammering down on this cul-de-sac, will there be trail access or access to that open space? Any plans with that?
There will be the ability to have passive recreation. There's no formal trail system there now, and the adjoining two projects, there was a lot of opposition from the HOA to the north that they did not want people, unfortunately, having access to their open space. So we've essentially kind of accepted that. It's unfortunate, but there will be passive opportunities for them on our site to use that open space for hiking, but it will not, unfortunately, tie into any kind of a regional trail system, just based on the fact that the private entity that adjoins the property does not want any public access to their open space.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Thank you. I have a question for the applicant. So it says that there is habitat and there's potentially protected plant species, and that habitat may be impacted. And I know there's a condition number 9 that says prior to the issuance of any code, you'll work with a qualified botanist. What will happen? What do we anticipate will happen if there is protected species? Is that just are we gonna be able to work?
That is a condition that's been applied to several projects in general in the North Valleys. We don't anticipate having that issue arise based on what was found on the adjoining two sites, which did not have it, that have already been approved. If it does, then we'll have to develop a mitigation plan to the satisfaction of the state and the city.
Okay. Okay, and then so someone mentioned earlier the going back to the fire issue, it was 11 minutes from the nearest fire station. Is that correct?
No, 6 minutes from the nearest fire station, 11 minutes from the second closest fire station.
Okay, great. Okay, perfect. So I think all my questions are answered, but I do have comments whenever you're ready, Chairman.
Okay, comments it is.
Okay, so generally when there's hillside development, I'm very cautious about, allowing for certain types of housing development. I think in this case, there is enough, they have accommodated quite a bit for that open space, and the hillside cut is pretty limited. So I'm not terribly concerned. I bring this point up just for purposes of the nuance and, kind of showing why I make certain decisions for purposes of precedent moving forward. But in this particular case, given that the applicant has made an effort to accommodate those open spaces, and that there is, it does appear to be, sorry, I'm trying to come up with the words. I'm kind of thinking out loud. Does appear to be suitable for the area given the other development that's already in place. I think I'm okay with being a yes on this, but I did just want to point some of those distinctions out.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dracula, yeah, Commissioner Villanueva, you're right. I think when we look at this, they've done a really good job in meeting a need of the community. So I'm with you on that. Thank you for those comments. And Commissioner Gao, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me, homeowners insurance comes down with sprinkler systems. So it does help with the affordability when you're talking about a monthly payment of principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So that does play a little bit. I'd like to see those happening more often because they are getting cheaper to do.
Yeah, appreciate that feedback, Commissioner. That's good to know.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to make a motion if you're ready for one.
I am, please.
Okay. Case of LDC 22-00037 Coyote Crossing, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the tentative map and major site plan review subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, with the addition of a new condition identifying or requiring no parking signage on the cul-de-sac.
Great, we have a motion. I appreciate the additional condition. Oh, sorry. Can you make all the findings?
I can make all the findings. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Dracula, I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you and good luck with your project.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to item 6.4, case number LDC 22-00019, Reno Ironworks. Do we have a presentation from staff? Applicants.
We're waiting for John Krompottek to join us again.
I think that just speaks to how much I like the city staff here. Excited to hear their presentations.
John, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you. I heard from Chair Velto that he wanted to hear from staff. Do I got that correct? Can I reverse the order?
I always want to hear from you, John, so you're up first as well.
So I am up, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Good evening once again, Commissioners. John Krompottek. I'm here on behalf of Reno Ironworks. Mr. Pelter, Bill Pelter, is with us this evening as well. If you had any questions for the owner and applicant of this project. This is in fact a major site plan review for grading, cuts and fills greater than 20 and 10 respectively, and hillside development. On Spectrum Boulevard, I think a very familiar site to all of us that know the region. The freeway, of course, just a little bit away from Spectrum Boulevard, north of Dandini, north of the significant markers in our community, Dandini Research, TMCC, and of course the regional public training, public safety training facility, just abutting us to the north, and mirroring it on the south would be the SPCA. I understand there's approved multifamily across Spectrum Boulevard as well. This is what I'd like to do is go through key issues. These are very much in the way I prepared this in alignment with staff analysis and focus on those issues. I think that's really what this stuff boils down to. Very specific by request. Use compatibility is key issue number one. This is an indoor manufacturing, a fabrication facility for relocation that's permitted by right in the MS zone, as noted on the zoning map here. And we did have the letter, hopefully you guys saw it, it was submitted to staff from the director of the training center to the North Public Safety Training Center, that is, they felt it was a good, suitable employment use for this particular area. Key issue number two, site design. This is really about site design by way of request. I would note that all parking and landscape does meet the code requirements. The large buffer we put on the street, I appreciate the staff recommendation. They said, can we do a continuation of the street trees there? So we added those in process. Third bullet point notes that, second bullet point, a large buffer does help for truck mitigation of noise. Those street trees are really there for continuation of a street tree treatment along on the Spectrum Boulevard for consistency and for character. And then revegetation of the 4 acres. It's actually 4.8 acres is effective for really minimizing any visual impact that's done by the site development and the grading. There's your site plan. Basically, there's about equal parts of the site plan and open space provided. I think it's pretty apparent in looking at it graphically. And then there's a future phase parcel as well in the front. More on key issue number 2, site design. We have to meet the open space requirements of the Hillside Development Code. You know, the Hillside Development Code really has 2 distinct pieces. One is density. Well, that doesn't apply a density reduction by way of not having a density threshold in the zoning district, but the open space does. So to pop that area, you can see that we have 4.8 acres of open space provided in the finished site plan. Key issue of site design, maybe the most important in learning, you know, what's important to staff and what was important in the approach to our design on this project, on this site. But we got a little, you can see the little rock outcropping. We've accentuated it with those little blips on the image there to show that it is significant. It was significant by all measures, including the NAB. And you can see that separates the native area from the grading area by the red line there, in complete preservation of that rock outcropping. Key to the Hillside Ordinance. Key issue number 3, grading and hillside development. So can you see my pointer there, the cursor? Okay, so along that roadway, right, there's always a challenge when you're dealing with hillside development because we have to make grades work for access and meet engineering standards. That road is a maximum of 4%. There are trucks that go here that's only 5 or 6 trucks per day. But with trucks, we have to have a little bit. You guys have heard 6% grade. You probably hear this all the time in this profession. Sometimes 8% grades on low volume streets. In this case, we're at 4%. So that drives a big part of the site design. You can see the contours above that road. That's all 3-to-1 slope. We worked with staff on that. We actually wanted to go to 2-to-1, but again, that's, and it was supported by the geotech recommendation. But in this case, we could make it work, daylighting the slope at the edge of improvements there and do 2-to-1. Similarly, on the south end here, go from the property line to the edge of improvements, and we have a 3-to-1 slope there. Building also isn't placed in a way where it's placed in a location to minimize the extent of grading necessary to do this. A bit on site photos. Again, you can see the rock outcropping there. I think the lower, in my view, the lower one shows it best and significant in the analysis and approach to our site design. And there are our building elevations for the building. That covers it. Commissioners, I'm prepared for any questions you might have. We do agree with the staff report. We agree with all the conditions as written by staff. I see Leah Brock is here to represent this, this on behalf of staff. Also with me is Justin Farley, he's a civil engineer. And Bill Flanner, I think, should be, you know, I can't ever see anybody in these Zoom meetings, but Bill's a broker and a development expert, has also been part of the team. He is here as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Do we have a presentation from the city?
Leah, are you ready to present? Okay, good.
Can everybody see my presentation?
Yes.
Wonderful. Good evening, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Leah Brock, Assistant Planner with Development Services, the City of Reno. Like Joey earlier, this is my first presentation to this body. This evening, I am presenting the application for a major site plan review for Reno Ironworks. John did a great job of presenting, and I'll just touch on a few other issues. The proposed development is located on an approximate 11.88 acre site on the east side of Spectrum Boulevard, north of the intersection with Dandini Boulevard and east of US Highway 395. The applicant is requesting approval of a major site plan review to construct a new 40,000 square foot industrial manufacturing building. A major site plan review is required due to the grading cut steeper than 20 feet and fills greater than 10 feet in height. Also, it is considered hillside development since the site contains slopes exceeding 15% on more than 25% of the parcel. The site is located in the mixed-use suburban zoning district, which allows for a wide variety of uses, including residential, commercial, public, institutional, civic, public, quasi-public, and industrial uses. The proposed indoor manufacturing use is allowed by right in this zoning district. To the north is the public facilities zoning district, and to the southeast is mixed employment. Key issues related to this request include compatibility with surrounding zoning and uses, grading, hillside development and natural resource protection, and overall site design. The proposed development is compatible with the surrounding zoning districts and land uses. Located to the south is the SPCA of Northern Nevada, which is an existing veterinary hospital and animal shelter. To the west is vacant property that has been approved to allow for a mixed-use development consisting of multifamily, hotel, and commercial uses. Both of these properties are also located in the mixed-use suburban zoning district. To the north is the Washoe County Regional Public Safety Training Center, and to the east is open space in the unincorporated Washoe County. The existing topography of the site consists of a 70-foot uphill slope from Spectrum Boulevard toward the middle of the site where the existing hill is located. The steepest slopes are located on the front half of the site and will require significant grading in order to accommodate any kind of development that would be feasible for the site. Condition 8 is required by Reno Municipal Code and will mitigate the effects of the grading and hillside development by requiring backfill and revegetation. The project includes grading and site work comprised of roadways, sidewalks, utility infrastructure, landscaping, parking, and lighting. This request also includes a phasing component for a future Phase 2 pad site. All backbone infrastructure, including the grading, drainage, retention or detention, roadways, and Phase 1 landscaping, will be installed with Phase 1 of the project, but have been sized to accommodate both phases. The applicant has provided a hillside development slope analysis with the application, indicating that 4.4 acres of open space is required due to existing slopes. But as John pointed out, the proposed project includes 4.8 acres of open space, thus exceeding the requirement. Conditions 5, 6, and 7 are all related to the unknown details of Phase 2, and Condition 9 stipulates deed restrictions to preserve the open space. Although the hill in the middle of the site is proposed to be graded, the applicant has provided open space along Spectrum Drive and proposes to preserve the most significant natural rock outcrop on the site, which is highly visible from Spectrum Boulevard. Due to the existing topography, the hill in the middle of the site is only visible from the very top of Spectrum Drive, whereas the preserved rock outcrop and natural terrain along the street is much more visible and worth preserving, and the deed restricted open space will ensure that it remains as such in perpetuity. The applicant presented the project to the Ward 4 Neighborhood Advisory Board on November 18, 2021, and staff has not received any comments. As John pointed out, a representative from the Regional Public Safety Training Center has provided comments in support of this request and states that the proposed development is compatible with their existing operations. Staff has found that the proposed development is allowed by right in the mixed-use suburban zoning district and is compatible with the surrounding development. The proposed development also exceeds the required amount of open space and will permanently preserve a significant natural rock formation. In conclusion, the proposed development appears to meet or exceed code standards and addresses the applicable findings. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the application with the conditions as stipulated. That concludes my presentation. The recommendation is on the screen and I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll come back to the Commission for disclosures. Start with Commissioner Draculich.
Commissioner Draculich, I've spoken with the applicant's representative and I've visited the site.
Commissioner Villanueva.
Commissioner Villanueva, I visited the site. And I also read the letter from Regional Public Safety Training Center. There were two. There was one on November and then there was one in December. So I read both of those.
Thank you. Commissioner Munoz.
Commissioner Munoz, I'm familiar with the site. I spoke briefly with the applicant's representative, and I spent quite a bit of time at the Public Safety Center, their training.
Commissioner Gower.
Commissioner Gower visited the site and spoke with the applicant's representative.
Thank you. Commissioner Velto, I am familiar with the site. We'll now open up public comment. I have one request to speak form. Are there any other requests to speak forms, Michelle?
No, that was the only one. No voicemails and no correspondence was received.
Thank you. Ms. Dobbs?
Good evening. Jill Dobbs for the record. I am the Executive Director of the SPCA of Northern Nevada. The first concern I want to bring to this body's attention is we did not receive any notice, no letters about that February 22nd meeting, nor about this evening. We are the adjacent landowner. We are a very significant existing business, so that was disappointing. We only saw the bright yellow sign because we happen to have a volunteer walking a dog in a new and different direction. The applicant had reached out to us a month or two ago asking us to support the project, which we do not support it for a number of reasons. So I'd like clarification on what those notice requirements are. We don't only own the land that our adoption center is located on, but we own that parcel between our adoption center and the applicant's property line. So I can't understand why we didn't receive direct notice. So I'm going to make some comments on some very last minute research and then sitting here obviously listening to the presentations. I disagree. I do not think that this is compatible with existing operations. We run our animal adoption center right there. We already have a problem with excessive speeding on the street just with the emergency center. The noise, the traffic, our animals live indoor as well as outdoor. It's a struggle enough to deal with the shooting range. That's just up the road. But the pictures are very misleading that were used during the presentation, which is disappointing. This is a significant hill. Y'all said that you've been out there to the site. The rock cropping that's closest to the road, what about the rock cropping that's on top of the big hill that they're proposing to grade and then push that dirt off to level out the low-lying area behind the site? How is that any less significant than the rock cropping by the road? The noise, the traffic, the semi-trucks, as has been mentioned, a residential apartment complex has already been approved for right across the street. How are those compatible? This is going to be loud. It's industrial manufacturing. Again, our animals live inside outdoor lives. We have play yards. We have the large yards up top. It's not compatible with existing use, nor would it be compatible with the apartments already approved for that spot. Revegetation for visual impact appears very insufficient to me. They are going to be leveling this significant hill. I don't understand how just planting some additional vegetation is really going to mitigate those issues caused by that. The excessive grading alone, even just as a member of this community, I wouldn't support this project just based on the excessive grading that's required. And that's my time. So thank you all.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in public comment, we'll close public comment. Come back to the commission for questions.
Chair, I'll start. Commissioner Munoz, this is for John. What is exactly the plan for the business? What are they going to be manufacturing there?
They are. Excuse me. Can you hear me? Okay. You can hear me.
Yes, John.
I would like to. I know generally, but Bill Pelter is on. I see his videos on. Bill, can you turn your mute off and answer the question of Commissioner Munoz? Exactly what you're manufacturing? It's still fabrication business.
Yes, good evening. I'm Bill Pelter, Reno Ironworks. We structural steel, miscellaneous metals manufacturer. Have been in the Reno area since 1906. We are currently just down the street at 333 East Park Boulevard. So we're just wanting to move up the street. If you want to see the existing facility of what we do, it's there for everyone to see on the street. And it's obviously a similar operation that we plan on Spectrum.
Okay, thank you. Leah, next question is for you. With the project that was approved across the street, which is residential, the hotel, there's some restaurants going in, how is staff justifying what's going on in this new proposed project to what has already been proposed and is in the works for across the street?
So just to be completely clear, Leah Brock for the record, I've stepped into taking this case over for Kyle Chisholm. So the staff report and all of the material was all done by Kyle. Only the presentation in the last few days have been by me. What I can tell you is that the use is allowed in this zoning district. The question today is about the grading and the hillside development. So again, this isn't a question of use. This is a question of grading and hillside development standards, not use standards.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, does that answer your question?
No, but I understand where you're coming from. I understand what we're asking here, but I'll save my comments for the comment section.
I'll wait till the end if you.
I can ask questions, but mine are more comments. I visited the site, and like she said, this is just a matter of hillside grading, and so I'll save my comments till the end, till the comment section.
Commissioner Gower.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I ask for a clarification on that point and Commissioner Munoz's questions? I'm struggling with that as well because I'm looking at a finding under a major site plan review. Finding A is the proposed design is compatible with surrounding development. So I'm not sure how we can not consider the project in terms of compatibility. Is it staff's interpretation that it is strictly the design of the structure, landscaping, grading is compatible with the surrounding development? Staff is not considering any sort of use considerations in that compatibility equation?
That is correct. The use is allowed by right. It is the design standards, the development standards that we're looking at in this major site plan review.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I do have another question for John. John, I went out there, I took a look at it. I do have concerns about the magnitude of the grading that's proposed here. I mean, you stand on the roadway, and I even kind of walked up the hillside a bit. I mean, it is a pretty significant grade going upwards there. And if you look at the hill from the east side, there is sort of a rock outcropping there. So obviously some concerns there, but I'm hoping that you can tell me that the relative at the end of project, when the project is built, the relative grade of the finished floor elevation of the structure relative to the street. So I can just get a sense of what I looked at today versus what will be there in the future, or what would be there.
So I want to make sure I understand your question, Commissioner Gower. You're saying, are you looking at proposed pad grade?
Finished floor elevation of the proposed building relative to street level.
I'd like to ask Justin. So the building is 30 feet high roughly, but you're asking finished grade of the building relative to existing street grade at Spectrum.
Right.
Justin, can you look at the grading plan real quick and help me with that?
Yeah, no problem. Justin Farley for the record, Reno Engineering Corp. Give me 2 seconds. I'm pulling up the finished floor on that one to get you those numbers. So, Commissioner Gower, from the proposed driveway, which would be existing grade down there on Spectrum Boulevard, the finished floor elevation is proposed at roughly 13 feet above that elevation. And then say you're in the midpoint of the site, you're looking at about roughly 25 to 30 feet above that midpoint of the existing Spectrum Boulevard to the finished floor elevation. And for reference, the top of that hill is roughly 50 to 60 feet above Spectrum Boulevard currently.
So, okay, so that's helpful. So we're talking about half of that, the existing elevation coming down to the point where the finished floor would be.
Yes, sir.
That's helpful in understanding the magnitude there of the grading. And I guess if I could circle back to staff on and Leah, I know you're jumping into a situation here where you didn't write the staff report, but trying to understand staff's analysis relative to the significance of the hillside there, not the rock outcropping that's being preserved, but the other one, and staff's interpretation of significance of that outcropping or non-significance is what I'm understanding.
I think that Kyle, when he wrote, Mr. Chisholm, when he wrote this, really felt that the way that the property is with that large slope is not going to be compatible for any sort of use that's going to go into the MS zoning district without a major grading. And in the design, John has worked on trying to mitigate that, to make sure that the least amount of grading was done, placement of the building, preservation of that open space possible. So I think that, and I'm just making this assumption based on what I've read on the staff report, the same thing that you've read in the staff report, is that Mr. Chisholm felt that major grading was going to be required for any development on this site, and that the applicant in this case had gone above and beyond to design a project that would be the least amount of grading, preserve the most amount of open space, preserve the outcrop near closest to Spectrum Boulevard, and that in that we were going to lose this hill, but what we were going to gain would be more beneficial.
And I appreciate that, and I appreciate the approach taken in terms of the site design. I guess what I'm trying to understand, and I know it's sort of a tricky question in terms of how we interpret one site feature versus another, but I'm trying to understand the staff's interpretation of the significant rock outcropping and why that feature does not qualify, and there aren't particular considerations of it being preserved, or essentially like we're building around the other one near the street. Why not the same considerations? Is it because of the aesthetics of it, the magnitude of the exposed rock? I mean, what are staff's considerations to make that determination that it's not significant?
I think that it was based on aesthetics and visibility from the street.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are the only questions I have at the moment.
Thank you, Commissioner Draculich.
Commissioner Draculich, just kind of piggybacking on Commissioner Gower, just so I'm clear, trying to understand fully. So for the applicant, whoever wants to answer, so how much of the building will we see from Spectrum? I know you're talking about the floor all the way up to about 30 feet. How much will be visible from the street there?
You're talking about just kind of line of sight, roughly a person standing on Spectrum.
Correct.
You're going to see probably the top half of the building, something along those lines, right? Imagine looking up. We still, we have grade sloping up, and then it's toward the back, so that's going to hide part of the building. And I would guess about half of the building by way of line of sight.
Okay. And I understand you probably did this because you did have to be in alignment with the open space buffer there. Is this the best you guys can do there because of that?
Is what the best?
Yeah.
The site design?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many moving parts. I'd like to kind of peel it back a layer and roll a response into your question, Commissioner, and also Commissioner Gowers. But if you look at a site like this, you see, think about the most diligent environmental analysis of a site, and you look at what's significant. There's grading on 100% of development sites, right? If it are flat, it's all horizontal grading. We don't have many of those sites left, the pure urban sites. So you get into suburbia, and in this case, you have mixed use zone, which is fairly intense by zoning. There was no indication of any open space preservation in the zoning or the master plan process. This was zoned mixed use suburban. So the 4 acres, 50% of the site of which we are developing is open space created by the project as a result of applying the principles of the Hillside Development Code. And so, you know, when you look at coming off of Spectrum Boulevard and you have to make grade, we don't choose how much cut we have, right? If you think about there being sort of a bit of a cone there, we don't say, oh, we're going to cut 10 feet off of it and put a building on that, or 20 feet, right? It's all three-dimensional stuff, and we're climbing up there, and we get to a point where we land, and that kind of drives the cut. And so whether it's 20 or 30 or 40 feet of cut is a function of making the engineering work and making the site work. The restoration is key to this, right? The open space provided, the revegetation, the re-landscaping, and the trees that go in all of that established landscape and revegetation. And that is the key mitigation. Over time, you don't know that that's been graded. It blends in with all of the surroundings. I hope that kind of covers it more in a broader scope. You know, these sites are, and I missed a key point on what I would call environmental analysis. We always do this. We always have topo. What vegetation do we have? What rock outcroppings do we have? Any drainage ways? Any wildlife? And the extent of botanical analysis. None of that is present with the exception of the rock outcropping. I would completely disagree with the lady who was representing SPCA. You know, there's no trickery in this business of evaluating rock outcroppings. We preserved the significant rock outcroppings. Nobody in any of this process has suggested the rocks that sit at the top of the site are a rock outcropping that's significant to the extent that it should be preserved. Nobody has suggested that, in all honesty and fairness to this applicant. And so that's the way, you know, that was our approach to the site. I think it's a way anybody would approach a site. And you know, we absolutely do our best to then look at restoration of slopes and restoration of graded area. Hope that helps.
Yeah, that more or less answered my question. I think I was a little confused there, but I appreciate what you brought to the table there.
Of course.
Commissioner Villanueva.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'm looking at this slope table that we've been provided, and this question's for the applicant, since I think you may know more than I understand. The planner in this case wasn't working on this a whole lot. So looking at the slope table, it seems like a lot of the development is going to take place. I mean, I know there's a lot of open space, but predominantly that development's going to be on top of a slope. And some of the highest areas of that slope, it looks like the 25% to 30% range. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And I heard you say earlier, 13 feet from the proposed driveway is the difference between the street, and the proposed driveway, and then 50 to 60 feet above Spectrum Boulevard. You guys aren't concerned about slope failure at all, or scarring, or just interfering with the natural ecosystem of that hillside? Is that not? Can you guys explain a little bit about how you're mitigating some of those factors?
Let me go to the landscape plan. So the mitigation there, I think it's best represented. Really, it's best represented here is the landscape plan. So this mitigation here, of course, we talked about all that, you see all the re-veg area that's in the yellowish green area, right? 4.8 acres that becomes open space in perpetuity. So that is your mitigation area, because the rest is obviously graded. You see the paved area is graded for, parking, the more development landscaping, and the grade that brings you into the project, the street rather, the driveway. And then everything else on the perimeter is revegetation and landscaping, and of course the street trees along the street. That is your primary mitigation on grading. Over time, there's no indication of any visual impact or of any grading.
And with for example, with the 15 feet, thank you for answering that.
Of course.
With regard to the 13 feet from the proposed driveway, what kind of trucks are you all going to be having going in and out of there? Because that 13 feet really makes me nervous when you have big semis coming up and down that.
Yeah, that's why we have 4% grade I mentioned in my initial presentation, so that it is safe and meets any design criteria that you would have for trucks. That is our street grade, maximum street grade. Trucks are a smaller part of the overall equation in traffic, but just the fact that we have 5 or 6 trucks per day is key to limiting the grade a little bit more of the street.
But it only takes one truck to cause an accident. So can you explain a little bit about that roundabout, a little bit about the traffic flow? Because I'm having a hard time understanding that as well. Can you go into details?
You're talking about it down on Dandini?
Yeah, can you actually, just in general, can you explain a little bit about the traffic flow for me?
So the traffic flow, let's go back to an exhibit. What we have, you can see right here, we had a bit of a challenge. We coordinated
John, you can't see your screen.
Oh, excuse me. Can you see that?
No.
No.
Can you see that?
No.
You couldn't see that?
No. We just see you.
Okay. I guess we lost our shared screen feature. So let's go to that again. Can you see it now?
Yes.
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 Okay. So there's the plan that you can sort of see. We've put that curvature from the driveway turning left on Spectrum. We had 2 scenarios here. When we started design, we had a right turnout, went to the cul-de-sac, the end of the cul-de-sac up at SP, or at the Public Safety Training Center, and then to turn around. It's an awkward, cumbersome movement. So what we did is worked with the apartment developer across the way, aligned our driveways with theirs, have a break in the median, and then all traffic would turn left out of the site at that median break, have alignment with the driveway of the multifamily, and run everybody down the hill from there. That's the idea.
Okay, so the trucks will be kind of and I know you said there's only 6 trucks or so, but the trucks will be going left, and then you have the apartment complex on the other side going right. So there's going to be points in time when trucks may be entering the traffic lane with your everyday compact vehicle from the apartment complex, or people walking their dogs, or other, bicyclists and things like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's definitely, you have trucks as a minor part of the overall traffic. This is a low traffic generator. And yes, it's a collector street on Spectrum. You're always going to have some trucks mixed with passenger vehicles.
And they're coming down from that hill. Is that right? From that, I know you said the 4 foot or what?
Well, I'm talking about, the city street. I don't know the existing grades there, but that's been around for a long time. But I'm just talking about our on-site driveway is 4%, this area right here. That's the part that we control for safety, right? And so that's where we minimize the grade of that entry road into the site.
Okay, you control that, but it also, is it correct to say that everything kind of flows together? We have to look at the big picture?
Of course. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Velto, and I have a couple questions for, it's probably best for the applicant. John, do you know how far away the building is from SPCA's outdoor kennels?
It's a couple of 100 feet. I don't know the exact dimension.
And what type of sounds come from this building? Are there, I'm trying to understand what the noise would be.
You're talking about sound from generated by the site.
Yes.
There's routine loading and unloading of materials. If you think of the 5 trucks per day, they would come into the site. There's a area in the back here where they would deliver goods and then they would move them into the building. So, you have forklift operations taking materials off of the trucks and moving them into the building. Bill, as he mentioned to me, I asked him the same question. He said, there's noise. This is not a huge noise generator. There's not a lot of clanging, but there is the delivery of the materials, removing them from the trucks, putting them into the buildings.
And what
the building.
Is the major site plan review mean that this property has to be used the same forever? And I guess by that question I'm asking, are there other potential uses that could come to this property in the future that would make more noise?
Yeah, I'm certain of it. I mean, you're saying like if this building was for sale for some reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the table of uses in the MS code and what could be allowed.
So here's my concern. My concern is that there's an animal shelter right there with dogs that are likely scared, and there's a prospect now of a bunch of loud noises that are going to contribute to them already feeling unsafe in a shelter. So I'm trying to understand how that's not going to happen.
Bill, would you like to touch on noise? I mean, your operation better than anybody in this meeting.
Yeah, right. It's to say I'm not going to generate noise, of course, it would be true. My concern and comment would be, as far as the dogs go, I hear the gun range from my existing building down par. And as far as the dogs being afraid, I'd assume the guns would scare them far more than my forklift or a tractor trailer coming in with a load of steel. Also, the training facility has a constant stream of fire trucks up and down Spectrum. So in comparison, the freeway right there, in comparison to my neighbors, I think my noise is insignificant.
Okay, thank you. I also want to ask about the notice requirements, because we had a neighbor of the project say they were not noticed. What is your understanding of the notice requirements? And that might be directed towards either staff or the applicant.
I can answer that question.
Please.
Per NRS, all property owners within 750 feet of the property boundary lines would be noticed, or 30 people or 30 property owners. So if 750 feet doesn't go out far enough, they'll expand that. I can tell you, being that those are adjacent properties, they should have been noticed. I can't tell you why they didn't receive notice.
What was the notice process that occurred from y'all's perspective, John?
So typical of us, right? We get the verification of the public notice description. We have to make sure that it's accurate for what's being proposed. We then send that off to a sign company who produces the, 3x4 yellow sign. And then it's posted that Friday, I guess that would be 5 p.m. Friday, 12 days before the hearing. We know that, in fact, all of that was satisfied to the letter of the law in this case.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just for reference, we do have the SPCA on our noticing list. So that was sent out. So I can't speak to why they didn't receive it, but it was included on our list.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, I have a question. John, quick question for you. If you're in the SPCA parking lot and you're looking up to the project site, I know there is quite a elevation change there. Would you be able to see the building from where it's proposed to be located? And if so, could you estimate how much building we would see there? I'm just trying to wonder if that's going to cut down some of the noise for that area.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It does add to the separation equation, right? Because you got horizontal and vertical separation. I would guess you're saying finished grade of the site. It's probably going to be 20 feet higher than the existing SPCA to be safe.
And can you give me a rough estimate of what the building footprint proposed is going to be? How far that's going to be from the SPCA building itself? Do you know?
Justin, can you measure that online real quick?
Yeah, no problem.
I'm saying it's 300 feet, but that might be a little mistaken. It's probably 200 feet plus.
No, you nailed it, John. I measured it off Google Earth, and it's estimated at 300 to 350 feet.
Okay.
From back of SPCA to the front of Reno Ironworks.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you, Chairman. How this application is for the planner, I think she would probably be the best. How close by is the nearest public service facilities such as fire, police, such as that? I know there's a training facility, but I mean actual, I call 911 and they come and put out a fire.
I do not have that information in front of me. Maybe John has it.
I don't know the distance. I know the station, which is the one over there near the corner of Parr and Virginia. It's not far away, but that's all vague. It's, meets the response time requirement, but I forget the exact distance.
Okay, so it does meet the six minute requirement?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, that's a couple of miles away. It would probably be in the 4-minute response time.
Okay.
It's straight down Parr Boulevard.
There's no further questions. We can move into discussion. Who'd like to get us started? Commissioner Draculich?
Thank you, Commissioner Draculich. Kind of touching on one of your last questions is when I was looking at this, is it perfect? No. But I think about this usage and how it was zoned with that rezoning we had. This could have been changed into open space if the city felt that was the best use for the community and what it was looking for it to become. So I don't understand if they did or they wanted to, but right now we have an MS zoning. And what is the best usage there? What is the best building? Is it more apartments, more living? Probably not. That's even more grades and cuts. So right now, looking at this, I feel like what we have in front of us is probably doing a pretty darn good job at it, noted by Leah. And it sounds like the applicant put a good foot forward with a potentially strong project.
Thank you. My biggest concern is really the safety, particularly, the hillside, it's really high, and I'm really concerned about just the traffic in and out of there. The grading, the development is predominantly on a hill. So that I understand that it is zoned to MS, but there are other types of development that I feel could do a better job of mitigating some of the hill grading and cutting and some of the associated factors with that. The safety, there's a housing development directly across the street, and I was just at that site today to take a look at it, and I did the roundabout, and then I went up, and the infrastructure there is terrible for something like this. I am really concerned about the safety of the individuals in the area. I mean, we do have an animal hospital across the way, and then housing. And then that is one of the factors that we are to consider in a major site plan review. I understand hillside is the number one factor, but it is a totality of a bunch of factors. And my biggest concern is safety, public safety. I also don't necessarily believe, I know it's zoned MS, but I don't think it's compatible. I think there could be other better compatible types of uses that are also permitted under MS. So I just don't think that this is an appropriate development for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gower, Commissioner Munoz, would either of y'all like to weigh in?
I would. I was waiting for Commissioner Munoz. All right. So I'm respecting staff's interpretation of what's being proposed and our scope relative to the use. I mean, I do have concerns of the use based on compatibility, but focusing in on the grading and particularly looking at finding E under limits on grading. It talks about mitigating visual impacts of development near prominent ridge lines. So my line of questioning to staff was, noting the ridge line and trying to get an understanding of its significance or prominence. Essentially this finding becomes moot because that ridge line is just being graded away. It's being flattened essentially. That just it makes me concerned about the magnitude of the grading and whether that it is appropriate to make this finding based on mitigating those visual impacts, because it just takes the ridge line away. And I'm a little bit concerned that our criteria for understanding significance is maybe not super well defined. And so that's why I'm struggling with my ability to meet that finding in particular under limits on grading. So thank you for the opportunity to express that, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
I would maybe I want to hear the other responses from the commissioners, and we might be able to entertain a question after. Commissioner Munoz?
Commissioner Munoz for the record. So being very familiar with the area and knowing where the entrance to this is coming in, it leaves me a lot less concerned because it is above. It is coming at a more flatter spot. The grading is leveling the area out because it's a very unlevel area. I don't feel that ridge line there is all that significant because of the large ridge line behind it. So I have less concern there. The grading is significant, but I believe it makes good use of the area the way they're doing it. So I'm a little less concerned to that. I am concerned with the compatibility of the area, but that's not what we're looking at tonight. So with everything that is before us tonight, I don't see a reason why I can't go with it. Honestly, that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do have a question for the applicant. Do you have anything else you think we should know?
Thank you, Chairman. To Commissioner Gower's point, This is not my opinion. It's not semantical with respect to finding E. He pointed to the wording that says prominent ridgeline. That is a noted thing in the city. This is not a prominent ridgeline. There's a complete difference in a hillside that meets hillside criteria and a prominent ridgeline. By no measure is this a prominent ridgeline. It's like a conical section, and we have graded that conical section down. That's, I just wanted to make sure that that the record shows that.
My apologies. I appreciate that. I did not foresee that turning into a direct response to a commissioner, so I apologize for that. But I do appreciate always want to give people an opportunity to point something out, especially applicants.
Thank you.
I struggle a little bit with framing this issue as less than what I read the code as permitting us to look at. It seems like my reading of 1808.304 means that we have to look at all the general criteria when there's an application. That allows us to look at the consistency with the master plan. I struggle with some of the consistencies given that just looking at the guiding principles, we want to have well-managed growth. I don't necessarily know if it's well-managed growth to have this development right across the street from a housing complex, from apartments. Having a healthy and inclusive community, I think, includes having a safe environment, and there's concerns there, as well as promoting a vibrant neighborhood. But aside from that, even if I was incorrect in my assessment that we're allowed to look at general criteria, I have some similar concerns to what were expressed from Commissioner Gower and Commissioner Villanueva. I also want to point out, I think this is an instance where it might have been helpful to get SPCA's buy-in and talk with them about the project's development, given that there's only 2 neighbors, and that they feel like they weren't noticed is a little bit concerning to me. So that's kind of how I feel about this project. But I, as always, respect all of your opinions, and I think it's difficult hearing, Commissioner Drakulich, Commissioner Munoz speak your opinions because I tend to sympathize with what you're saying. I think this one I view just a little bit differently. Is there a motion?
Commissioner Drakulich, I'm willing to make a motion.
Please.
In the matter of case number LDC 22-00019 Reno Ironworks, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the major site plan review subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, and I can make the findings.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Commissioner Mooney, I can second.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, can we do a roll call vote?
Yes. Drakulich?
Yes.
Gower?
Normally, I'm ready to go with my decision on this one. It's yes.
Okay, Munoz?
Yes.
Belto?
No.
Villanueva?
No.
So the vote is 3-2 and 2 absent. Carl?
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can we have discussion on the motion? Or is it done? That's fine.
We can't hear you.
Are we able to have a discussion ex post about the motion, after the fact about the motion?
You can have discussion, sure.
Okay, and then after your discussion, could you read the appeal process into the record, please?
Yes. My question to you, may I have the appeal process in writing to read into the record? Thank you so much. Yes, Commissioner Gower, do you have comments on the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify my decision, and it was particularly in response to the applicant's clarification of prominent ridge lines and reminding me of the importance of that particular terminology in our city, and my misinterpretation of that finding E with respect to that particular item. I do still feel pretty strongly about the extent of the grading, but I do feel that the project as proposed has mitigated those impacts. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. To the applicant, any final action not including recommendation or failure taken by the Planning Commission may be appealed to the Reno City Council by the applicant, the mayor, or the city council member, or any person who's aggrieved by the action or inaction. An appeal together with fees must be filed with the city clerk within 10 business days starting on the day after the written notice of the action is filed with the city clerk. If the applicant has elected to use the former zoning code in effect prior to January 13, 2021, as authorized per RMC 1801.602, appeals must be filed within 10 calendar days starting on the day after written notice of the action is filed with the city clerk. And if the 10th calendar day falls on a weekend or holiday when the clerk's office is not open, the appeal may be filed the next business day. Thank you so much, and good luck with your project.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 7, the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm the only one at the meeting who was on the commission who was at the last meeting. We had a very light agenda at our last meeting, primarily an update on the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency's efforts on their natural resource plan. They're moving forward with that effort, and it will provide some important information, data for our decision-making processes, not only regionally, but locally. And our next meeting is not scheduled for a while.
Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 8, staff announcements.
Jason Garcia-Lebu, Planning Manager for the City of Reno, just for the record. Interesting month for us in the Development Services Division. At the City Council, there was the February 22nd workshop for affordable housing, which many of you may be familiar with. And at that meeting, existing conditions within the city and the region in regards to housing affordability, availability, and kind of growth and an assessment of the overall situation was presented. That's an ongoing issue, as most of you are aware, and it's kind of the hot button issue right now. So our development services team is looking at supporting the kind of the progress of that item. I know that that's coming back to the City Council. I believe on March 9th, there will be additional conversations and discussion. And I know there's been a commitment as well to future workshops as well. So in addition to that, there was some follow-up items that your commission had previously reviewed. And this was the adoption of the North Valley Commerce Center zoning map and the Little City Landscape Specific Plan District. So that was at the February 23rd commission or council meeting. So we continue to be busy. A number of items coming forward. Looks like there'll probably be about 4 items at the next meeting or so. So thank you.
Agenda item number 9, commissioner suggestions for future agenda items. Any suggestions? Okay. We'll open up public comments. Michelle, do we have any requests to speak forms?
I did not receive any request to speak forms, no voicemails, and no correspondence was received.
Seeing no one in the audience, we'll close public comment. Entertain a motion for adjournment.
Commissioner Villanueva.
So moved.
Moved.
Sorry, Commissioner.
There you go.
Aye. All in favor?
Yes. Yes.
Meeting is adjourned. Great, thank you.
Good night, everyone.